There are many moments throughout our healing and really our life journey that are pretty pivotal, that when you reflect upon them, it's almost like it's hard to believe that you were there, that you've done that you've shifted so much for yourself. And as I've been thinking about Sexual Assault Awareness Month for this year, I found myself thinking about a couple of experiences related to it that I thought I would share with you, kind of some full circle moments. Welcome. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you so much for joining me. So, as you may know, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and I've done different things to try to talk about sexual violence, sexual assault, childhood trauma throughout the years. And recently, as I was thinking about it, I thought of two experiences in particular related to Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And upon thinking about them, it was really just this moment of that it was so incredible to have been able to experience that. And while my experiences might look very different than yours, I would encourage you to really take some time and reflect on where you've come from, like where you started before you started healing, the place that you were emotionally, and then where you've been throughout the journey and where you are now, because there is so much in that to celebrate. And you may not be where you want to be ultimately, but that doesn't mean that what you've done doesn't matter, because it matters tremendously, because in order to get to where you want to be, you have to do this, you have to be in this space first. So my first experience with Sexual Assault Awareness Month was, maybe 25 or so years ago as a survivor. It was shortly after I started my healing journey at my local rape crisis center. It was April, and they were doing a Take Back the Night march. And they still have throughout the country, and even in other countries, I believe, places will still host a Take Back the Night march. And so we walked through the streets with candles, and then there was a speak out, and then there was another experience that allowed us to create t-shirts however we wanted that represented us as a survivor. And it was meant to be hung on the Clothesline Project. And the Clothesline Project is, I don't know how it started, but it is an actual clothesline. And people create shirts that domestic violence or sexual violence. And you create whatever you want to create with a message or just honoring yourself as a survivor. And those shirts are then hung up with clothespins on a clothesline, and then they can be shared in different places throughout the community during times when they're raising awareness about violence. So the march was great. The shirt was a little challenging for me. I wanted to do it, but at that time, I did not see myself as being creative at all. I was pretty quiet and very self-conscious about creating anything, believe it or not. So it was really a pretty significant challenge for me, but I did it. I created a shirt, and I had no idea whatever was going to happen to it beyond that point. But I was there with some people that I had been participating in a support group with. And so we all created one. And after that was the speak out. And there was a part of me that had a desire to get up and speak. What I would have said, I have no idea. And that's probably part of the reason that I didn't get up and speak. And I just sat there and listened and thought, I wish I could get up there and do that. I wish I could do that. And again, might be kind of hard to believe now with everything that I share here on YouTube, but that's what healing does. So I didn't get up and speak. And there were times in the hours that followed, in the weeks that followed, probably even in the months that followed, that I wish I had. But that was that, and it was over. Fast forward, I don't know how many years it would have been, but I finished my undergrad program, I finished my graduate program, and I had become a therapist working at that same rape crisis center. I was a therapist and an advocate. And for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, they did things throughout the month of April. This particular year, we were doing something at the local community college, which is where I actually started my educational journey. And we were doing some different types of things, but one of the things that we were doing was the clothesline project. We were putting up the clothesline. I believe we had some outside, we had some inside on this huge staircase on the railing and in the balcony part of it. So we had a lot of shirts. And I remember as we were unpacking it, I thought, oh, I wonder what happened to my shirt. And so we're just going along, putting up these shirts. And I reached down and grabbed one. And immediately I knew that it was mine, but I didn't believe, like it was hard to believe that was actually my shirt, that it would have been there in that box. And so I kind of looked at it. It took me a few moments. Like I took some time and just looked at it. And I reflected back on the night that I created it and all that it brought up for me. Because after that night, this was very early in my healing process, it stayed with me that night, and my fear and my shame and all of that stayed with me for a while. So it took a while to really kind of metabolize everything. There was a lot of good that came out of it. But of course, quite often we're left with all the doubt, right? Shame, uncertainty. So as I was standing there with this shirt, getting ready to hang it up on the clothesline, I reflected on that and just thought, I never would have been able to believe that night, as I sat there afraid to create, terrified to speak, I never would have been able to imagine being in that position on that day, being the one to raise the awareness, being the one to talk with people when they said, oh, that happened to me. Being able to facilitate an opportunity for people to know that they're not alone. I never would have been able to believe that. And now, all these years later, because it's been even longer now, when I reflected upon that, I just thought about how much can change when we don't give up on ourselves. We don't have to know what it's going to look like. We don't have to know exactly how we're going to get there. But we get there day by day, step by step, practice by practice. And one of my primary point of focus, particularly since starting my own practice during Sexual Assault Awareness Month, has been about just wanting people to feel safe to start talking about it, whether they're sharing their own story, even with a friend, so it doesn't have to be public, or they're creating other kinds of conversations, but creating opportunities to have discussions around the truth of what it means to be a survivor of childhood sexual trauma. Because most of the stuff that's out there for Sexual Assault Awareness Month tends to focus predominantly on adults who are sexually assaulted. And that's important. So I'm not trying to suggest that that's a bad thing. But of course, my focus is on working with survivors of childhood sexual violence, most of whom also experience violence as an adult, but wanting to create spaces and opportunities for people to be able to have conversations, to feel safe, to know that they're not alone. Because that is how we heal. That is how we shift our communities so that people feel safer speaking up. And when we, as a society, no longer hold shame about it, as children experience horrific things like child abuse, they won't be experiencing shame because they will hear conversations. They will see the shift that happens when people start talking about it. And because they won't feel that shame, because they know, because they've heard it and experienced it, because they'll know that they don't have to keep it secret, that it's not their fault, they will speak up. They will not fear being blamed or disbelieved. And for me, that is what is exciting about Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So I'd just like to encourage you to think about, even within yourself, bringing that sense of awareness, bringing that sense of understanding and compassion. Absolutely starting with yourself. And if you feel like you're doing pretty good there, think about having conversations with your friends, with your groups, in whatever kind of group you might be in, even like an entrepreneurial group or a book club or whatever it might be. Maybe even having a book club around Deeply Rooted. That would be an incredibly healing experience, I think. But there are so many ways that we can talk about it without having to talk about it in a public way in every conversation that we have with somebody. Every conversation shifts how we all end up experiencing and perceiving what it means to be a survivor of sexual violence. So I would love to hear from you. Maybe you share something you reflect on and see the shifts over time. Maybe you share your own experience with Sexual Assault Awareness Month, or absolutely anything else that you would like to share. But join me, because when you are commenting below, you are part of the conversation. You are creating spaces for other people who are reading your comments to know that they're not alone. It helps build their courage to know that it's okay, that it's safe, that there is no judgment in being a survivor or sharing. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here and being a part of this incredibly courageous community. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.